Sorry, sorry.
Technically, just like wander up. Like, hey, show part of the school. I don't know why you would. you guys have got a nice little island. New Zealand. It's not part of Australia. The flag looks very similar. It's not the same. So, you start to think to yourself, you got some businessmen who are selling alcohol to the colony. They're probably not the best people to build you a hospital. You'd be right. Not long after this central wing of the Rudd Hospital was complete, it started to decay. By 1894, they were building a new version over the ruins of the old one. Today, it is still a working hospital. It's the Sydney Hospital and the Sydney Eye Hospital. So you might see some patients and some doctors, or patients with eye patches wandering around. You can actually walk through the hospital, through this little thoroughfare here and on the other side too. You get this big area of grass behind the hospital called the Domains. And then if you keep walking across the Domain, you can get to the Art Gallery of New South Wales. Now, if you're interested in art, I do recommend checking it out. They got all kinds of different exhibitions. They got firstly European, Australian, and Asian art, and all their permanent exhibits are free entry, like many of our museums. And there's also Sydney Modern, right next to the Art Gallery of New South Wales, which is a modern art gallery. That's largely free entry as well. So you're a bit spoiled for choice with modern art, because there's actually another one that's also free down at Circular Quay, but I'll talk about that. Speaking of art, you guys looking at this statue behind me. This is Il Porcellino, which means small pig or small boar in Italian. I'll let you decide whether or not small is an accurate description for this pig, but it was donated in 1968 by an Italian sculptor, and it's a copy of a 500-year-old statue from Florence. And the idea is it's a good luck sculpture. You can see its nose is very shiny. The idea is you give its nose a bit of a rub, and if you like, you can donate some money to the hospital, and supposedly you'll get good luck. I don't know how true that is, but if you do decide to take a look at Il Porcellino, I also like to give the little frogs and the crabs and the lizards, and there's a snail around here, a little bit of a pat as well, there's a turtle, because they get left alone, they're a bit lonely. And if anyone's got any ideas for names for the little creatures under here, let me know. The suggestions we've had so far are Snappy the Crab, Kermit the Frog, and Gary the Snail. If anyone's got any other ideas, let me know. I'll give you guys a bit of time to take a look at the statue, and then I'll let you know when we'll cross the road. Because it means the building now is a legitimate Australian government institution was completely funded by alcohol. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. We don't have a drinking problem in this country. I don't know what to choose. Now, where we're standing now is the top of Martin Place, which you could say is the centre of the city, but it's also a banking and financial district. For instance, this big grey building next to us is the Reserve Bank of Australia. It's where they control all the money here. And for those of you who come from countries that recently switched to plastic banknotes, I think the UK was one of the more recent ones, we actually invented the modern part of that technology in Australia. It was supposed to be harder to copy, harder to forge, and it wouldn't turn it into like a soggy, papery mess if you left it in your pocket in the watch. Some people don't like the plastic money, but love it or hate it, we did invent it. This is our small monetary claim to fame here. We don't have much else. From here, we'll head down to the modern Martin Place and the GPO.
Is that GPR?
GPO.
Let's go in. Hi! Nag-tour na mi. Nga, may kabalo sa hayo. Say di ko maminaw bitaw. Mo-lost na ako. Kasi ako fade away. Hombre. Nagtanong lang ako somewhere. bird doon, nagdupa-dupa. Oh.
Sa center, get ang pole.
So we're now down at the bottom of Martin Place, and the big sandstone building behind me used to be the General Post Office, or if you're a lazy Sydney side, it's just the Jubilee. Now you may have noticed no one really sends letters anymore, so it's no longer a post office. It's mostly hotels and restaurants and that sort of thing. There is still a little post office, but it's tiny and small. It's just down there in the corner. It's a bit sad compared to what it is. The building itself was built between 1866 and 1891, and it was designed to rival the House of Parliament in London. You know, the clock tower is nice, but I don't think it's got much on the one that holds Big Ben. It was completely deconstructed, taken down during World War II, so it was feared that it would be the target of a bombing raid. But after the war ended, they put it back up. And they found this word, eternity, written on the bell, this Kirby handwriting. And they couldn't figure out how or when it had got there, so it had been locked up in storage. But it was around this same time, in the 1940s and 50s, that the word eternity was popping up all over Sydney on the ground with this Kirby handwriting. And no one could figure out who was doing it. Until 1956, when a reverend noticed one of his parishioners scrawling the word on the footpath with chalk. This man turned out to be called Arthur Stace. He was an illiterate, petty criminal, alcoholic who had converted to Christianity, and one day heard his reverend saying, "Eternity! I wish I could sound that word out to everyone in the streets of Sydney." So Arthur Stace took it upon himself to do just that. He got up early each morning, went to a different part of Sydney, and wrote the word eternity 40 times on the footpath in chalk or crayon. And it's estimated that throughout the 35-year period in which he did this, he wrote the word eternity around 500,000 times. And that one in the bell is probably the one that lasted the longest. That's not there anymore. The weather does tend to get to everything eventually. Now this big block of stone and the two statues we're standing in front of are the cenotaph. It's a memorial to Australian soldiers. You can see by the flags. And one of the kind of subgroups of that Australian soldiers are the Anzacs. You might have heard of them before. Anzac is an acronym. It stands for the Australian and New Zealand Army. And this memorial is here in Martin Place. This is where people signed up to join the armed forces during World War I. And it was the origin of Dawn Service, which is the annual commemoration of our Anzac forces on the 25th of April every year. And that date is significant because it marks the day in 1915 when Anzac forces landed at Gallipoli, which is now modern-day Turkey. Military operation that results in But on a somewhat lighter note, people do sometimes film movies in Sydney and in Martin Place specifically. One of the more recent ones was called Fall Guy, with Ryan Gosling in it, so they blocked off Martin Place, which was annoying because I was doing a tour on that day, so I couldn't come down here. They also managed to block the Harbour Bridge off to film that. I don't quite know how they did that, but I'm suspecting it involved large amounts of money. The one that more people have probably seen is The Matrix. People see The Matrix? Small film on it. Over there by that fountain is where Neo gets distracted by the woman in red. They also filmed Superman Returns here in Martin Place. But when they filmed that, they didn't want it to look like Martin Place here. They wanted it to look like New York. So they closed off all the roads and filmed them with New York style cams. When people film things in Martin Place and in Sydney, they tend not to want it to look like Sydney. I'm not bitter about that at all. Maybe just a bit. Now I mentioned at the start of the tour that George Street is quite a long street. That's our first example. This is still George Street along here. So if you wanted to get back up to Town Hall Square, all you'd have to do is just walk up George Street. We're not going to do that.
Sa tong street kanina.
Instead, we're going to walk down this little set of stairs next to the number 4, head down towards the City Recital Hall and a cool public art installation at Angel Place. We're in the middle of the city. So, we've been trying to revitalise our laneways over a few years to make ourselves a bit more like Melbourne. And one of the ways we've been doing that is by letting people put up works of street art, like this one here. It's called Forgotten Songs. And the idea is that it's these bird cages with speakers in them. So there's no actual birds in there, don't worry. That'd be a bit cruel, I think. But the speakers play the sounds of about 50 species of bird that used to live in the city area before they had to move on because of urbanization. And you can see the names of some of these species written in the footpath. So as we go down, you can have a listen to some of the birds that used to live in the city.
Don't touch my body.
One of the big things I noticed when I was over in Europe, how quiet the forests were compared to. Now I mentioned we were trying to revitalise our laneways, one of the ways with the street art. But another way we've been doing that is by letting secret bars open up all over the city. And this is an example down here. You can see there's a doorway and there's a lantern above the doorway. When that lantern is on, it means that the bar is open down there. You disappear down a set of stairs and you end up in a 1920s themed speakeasy kind of bar. Prohibition era. Not that we had much of a prohibition in Australia. The closest I think we had was in Canberra, where you weren't allowed to buy alcohol in Canberra. But all the people did was cross the border out of the ACT to Queanbeyan and then buy alcohol and bring it back, which was not illegal. So it's the closest thing we had. That one's called Palmer and Co. The atmosphere is pretty cool. I've been looking for an excuse to go for a while. And there are loads of these hidden bars all over the place. There's one down in Darling Harbour. Now, I can't remember exactly where it is because a friend took me there at about 2 in the morning. But we walked down a dark alleyway, went through an unmarked door, went down a fire escape, walked through another unmarked door, and there was just a whiskey bar under this building. It's called the Baxter Inn. Now, some of them do have themes, like the Baxter Inn. It's just whiskey. So if you don't like whiskey, probably don't go to the Baxter Inn. But this one's got a bit more variety. And if you want to try and find all of these on your own, that might be a few months worth of work. But if you want to just go and have a night out, funnily enough, an internet search for secret bars in Sydney will show you where they are. Or websites and magazines like Time Out, they've got lists of where you can find. So from here we'll cross this road and head down towards yet another place named after Governor Macquarie.
Ano tayo suit sa bar?
Anong musuot mo ka sa bar?
Magpapicture ka dito ba?
here are, of course, this cannon and the anchor. Both these came off a ship called the HMS Sirius, which was the flagship, the big main ship of the First Fleet. The anchor they pulled off the ship when it was wrecked off Norfolk Island. They hauled it out of the ocean, painted it and put it on display. But the cannon they actually unloaded here when they first arrived in 1788. yeah. Oh, in 1788. As sort of defense system. I don't know how effective a few cannons would have been at defending the entire harbour, but it's not to say they didn't have a few close calls. In 1802, there was a French sailor by the name of Baudin who visited Sydney peacefully, but he saw that it was very undefended. So he wrote home to Napoleon and said, if you're looking to come conquer some land, maybe Sydney's a good idea. But it wasn't until 1810 that Napoleon sent orders to the French colony of Mauritius to invade Sydney. And in the intervening time, the English had invaded Mauritius. So perhaps if they'd been a bit quicker, we could have all been speaking French right now. Who knows? From here though, we're going to head down towards the Circular Quay and our break stop.
Break stop. Smile, smile.
So here folks, where we're going to take our break today. So in there is a food court and some washrooms, bathrooms, restrooms, whatever you call them. If you want to get them, you have to walk this way into the building and then down the back wall is another tunnel that leads you to bathrooms. We'll meet back here in about 10 minutes. So I'll be here, it's about 25 past 12. I'll be here if you want to come have a chat. Other than that, I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Enjoy your break, folks.
It's only 100% convention.
Funny hotel.
Naka-remember na ko. Kumalain ko ng
So this saves me a bit of the helicopter ride, showing this to you all. We started off near Town Hall Square. There's Town Hall, we're at the front of the steps. And we talked about the old Sydney burial ground. And then we went into the Queen Victoria building, a long thin building with the green dots on the top of it. Then from there, we went up Market Street, and past Pitt Street Mall, and into Hyde Park, into Hyde Park, saw St Mary's Cathedral. And I mentioned the Australian Museum as a good place to start learning about some of our First Nations history. From the Archibald Fountain to get to the Australian Museum, all you have to do, walk out on College Street, follow it down, and you get to number 8 here. This is the Australian Museum on the furthest point of the intersection. Can't miss it. Big sandstone building. Then from Hyde Park, we went down Quarry Street, took a look at Hyde Park Barracks, James Church, and Gilbrama Hospital. And I also talked about the Domain, the big bit of grass behind Gilbrama Hospital. That's the Domain, big triangle right here. And then the Art Gallery of New South Wales is hanging off the edge of the model just there, it's number 55. And then there's the Sydney Modern, which is right next to it. So you walk right across the Domain, it's right there. Then we went down Martin Place, took a look at the GPO and the Cenotaph. We went through Angel Place, the hanging bird cages, walked past Australia Square and the bar. And now we're down here at Circular Quay and Customs House with this these two stripes on top of it, two red stripes. So from Customs House, we head out, take a look at Circular Quay, all the ferries, get our first good look at the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. Then we'll head into the Rocks over here, which is the more historical colonial part of Sydney. And then finally we're going to finish down at Dawes Point near Campbell's Cove, right under the Harbour Bridge. You can see the model goes all the way from the Harbour Bridge, follows George Street, and ends up down here at Central Station. And over here, for want of a better way of putting it, this is the touristy area of Sydney. It's called Darling Harbour. Underneath me is the Sydney Sea Life Aquarium, and across the bay are the curved roofs and the wharves of the National Maritime Museum. So, if you like looking at sea animals or boats, these are two places that you might want to check out. Also, if you want to take a swim in Sydney Harbour, you want to have a swim to go all the way out to Bondi and Coogee and all those places, you can swim in Sydney Harbour here. See this little triangle that's been cut out of Barangaroo next to this wharf? This is called Maranawi Cove, and it's a swimming spot that's recently been opened up. Maybe not today, it's a bit cool, but on a hot day, if you're here for a while, we're going into summer, so it might be a good idea to get to it. The Andrew Boy, it's further this way, it's hanging off the edge. Over there. From here though, we're gonna head out towards the circle.
Ako na to eh.